Hey everyone, my name is Usman and in this video we will build a rich text editor using Lexical, and by the end of this video we will surely master it. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, and let's dive into it. So here's the rich text editor we will be building. We can enter any text we want and then we can basically do different things, like I can make it bold, italic, underline, I can strike through it, highlight it, etc. Also I can make it a superscript, subscript, show it in a coded format, align it to the center, right or left, and then basically undo and redo all the actions I just performed. Also I can apply any heading formatting. So from H1 to H6 I can apply any heading formatting and you can see that it formats it. Also, if I want to save the rich text editor state to the server, I can click on the save button and it would save it. And if I refresh it, you will see that loads it from the server. So the data doesn't get lost, it persists, and we will implement all these features in this video. So let's remove all the code and build this from the ground up. So in order to get started, you have to install two dependencies, Lexical and Lexical React, because we will use Lexical inside React. After that, let's start importing stuff and start building the rich text editor. So I've got a rich text editor component here and I am rendering it in the app component. So basically, let's add the Lexical code here. So first I will add a box, which is just a div in Chakra UI. You can use any library to make the custom components you will have, like the toolbar and everything, but I'm using Chakra UI because I like it. First thing we'll add is the Lexical composer. So I will import it from Lexical React, Lexical composer, and this is basically the wrapper for everything Lexical related, and it works as a context provider. So if you know about React context, basically, so inside this Lexical composer component you will be able to add any plugin, anything you want, and it would work. And basically you will be able to extract the editor instance in any component, and this wraps everything which is Lexical related. So I will add this component, Lexical composer. Now this Lexical composer has an initial config prop, so I will add it. Initial config should be, let me make it here. So initial config is equal to, so it has some required properties. Let me add it here. So first is namespace. So namespace is basically the name of this rich text editor. Just like if you have multiple fields, you can give different names to this, and that basically differentiates those two fields. So namespace is basically, just like a name for the rich text editor. So I can give it a name like rich text editor 1 for now. I will make it dynamic later. Then the next property would be theme. So right now I will only add an empty object for the theme and we would come back to it later. And then the on error, so I will add an empty function for now. So these are the three required properties. You can see that the error goes away. And here I will add the nodes property. So nodes is basically if you are using some custom functionality in Lexical, then you need to pass the related nodes in the nodes array. So for this particular rich text editor which I will implement, I added the ability of formatting the text in the form of headings. Also you could format the text in the form of code blocks. So for that I will add the respective nodes here. So I will import the heading node from Lexical rich text and I will add it here. And then from Lexical code I will import some other nodes as well. So Lexical code, I will import the code highlight node and the code node. Let me copy these and I will add them here. So these are basically the nodes related to the functionality which I will implement. If you're going to implement some other functionalities like adding tables, adding lists, etc., then you will basically import those nodes from the respective packages and then add them here. Otherwise those functionalities won't work even if you implement them by following the docs. So this is important. Now if you go here, you can see that it still doesn't render anything. So basically this is just the config or the base for the Lexical project. We still need to add the rich text editor, etc. So the way Lexical works is this is the Lexical composer. Inside this we will have different plugins. So some are built-in plugins, some are plugins which we will add ourselves, custom plugins. So first of all I will add a plugin which is built-in. So I will import the RichTextPlugin from Lexical React, Lexical RichTextPlugin, and this is basically the main thing, the portion where we'll write and stuff. So this component has some additional props. So one is content editable. So I will import content editable. We have to pass a component here. So this would be Lexical content editable, and there I would get the content editable component, and there I have to pass it inside this prop. So content editable. Now this component also requires some other props like placeholder and error boundary, so let me add those. So placeholder, for now I will just add some dummy text here, and here in the error boundary I will import the lexical error boundary. So lexical error boundary, and this would go here. Now if I go to localhost, I see some text which is basically the placeholder, but I don't see any place for writing content. So basically I will have to style the content editable, give it a height or something. So I'll add a class name. Then basically I will use a library emotion CSS to inject inline styles. So if you want to use normal CSS, like you want that you add a CSS file and then you just add a class here and then add the styles in that particular CSS file, that is okay as well, your choice. So here I'll say height should be 120 pixel, then font size should be 12, padding should be 8, overflow should be auto. So if I now come here, you can see that if I click on it, there is a text field type thing, and I can add text and stuff, which is great. I also want to remove this focus border because it is kind of ugly. So I'll go here and I'll say outline should be none. So now that outline is gone, I also would want to add a border with a border radius so at least I can see it. So I'll go here and I'll say border should be 1 pixel solid black, and then the border radius should be 4 pixels. Great. So now you can see that there is a border around. Great. So the placeholder is not where it should be, so we have to style the placeholder a bit. So we'll absolutely position it based on the RichText plugin we have. So first of all, I'll wrap it with a box. The box is just a div in Chakra UI. I will basically place it inside the box. I will give a position relative to the box. Then here I will add another box, and then I will give it a class name and some styles. So I'll say its position should be absolute, its color should be slightly light grayish, its top should be 8 pixel, left should be 10 pixel, and then font size should be 12 pixel. Now if I go here, you can see that the placeholder kind of looks part of the text editor now, which is great. If I type anything, the placeholder goes away, and that is how it should work. So we have successfully added the placeholder as well. Now just like the RichText plugin, Lexical also has some built-in plugins which can add some more functionality. So for example, there is also an autofocus plugin. So if you want that whenever the RichText plugin gets rendered, it has autofocus by default, you can add the autofocus plugin. So let's import that. I will copy this, then here I'll say Lexical autofocus plugin, and here I'll import the autofocus plugin, and you just have to add it inside the Lexical composer. So I'll add it like this. Now if I refresh, you can see that it has focus by default, which is great if you want to add the functionality. Similarly, there are tons of other plugins as well. You can go to the Lexical documentation and you can check it out. Now I will like to add the toolbar because that is the main portion of the RichTextEditor, and then basically I will add the on-click handlers for those buttons, which would basically make the text bold, underline, etc. So I have already a toolbar plugin component here, but it is empty. So I will add it above the RichText plugin. So toolbar plugin, let me import it. Great. Now let me go to the toolbar plugin file. Right now it has got nothing. It has just got a button group component which basically provides some styles for all the icon buttons I will render inside this. Nothing fancy. Now I have a constants file, and in that constants file I already have an array created because I didn't want to waste time. And first of all, basically I have an enum. So this enum has all the actions I would like to perform. So bold, italics, underline, code, left align, right align, undo, redo, etc. So based on these rich text actions, I have created an array So the array has objects which have IDs, the icon which I will show in that icon button, and the label. So this is the area label if you want to add it. And yeah, so basically I will use this array to map out icon buttons, and based on this ID I will basically decide what I want to do with the text I've selected on click. So that is what I want to do. Let's do that. So I'll go to the Toolbar plugin, this text options. So I inside this button group I'll say rich text options dot map, and then I will get some options here. Let me return an icon button component here, and here I will get ID, label, icon, and font size. So in the icon button I will add the label, area label. So area label would be the label, then icon would be icon, then font size would be font size, and then basically the on click function. So on click function would be on action ID, and here I will copy the on action function name and I will make an on action function. So the on action function would get an ID which would be rich text action. Cool. Also within this array I have some dividers as well. So basically I will use a divider component which is just a vertical line to separate some group of icons. So here I'll say if the ID is equal to rich text action dot divider, then render the divider component, otherwise render this icon button. So now you can see that the icon buttons have rendered and they have the divider as well to separate the icons. Great. Now obviously right now if you click on the button nothing happens because the on action function is doing nothing. Let's add the logic for the on action function. So basically this on action function is getting the ID. Now I will add a switch case here, and based on the ID I will basically implement the text formatting or whatever I want. So I will add a switch case here. ID case would be rich text action dot bold, then break. Similarly I will add it for other options as well. So basically copy pasted this case statement for other options as well. Great. Now in order to do something with the editor we have to get the editor from the context. So I will import that. So I'll say import from lexical react lexical composer context, and here I'll get the use lexical composer context, and that basically gives us the editor instance. So const editor is equal to, I'll just use the hook. So basically this editor is the main thing in any component. If you want to format something, if you want to add event handlers, anything you want, this is the main thing. So I'll get the editor, and here I'll say editor dot dispatch command. So basically how these formatting thing works, we have to dispatch a command. In Lexical they have basically added different event listeners or something, that if someone dispatches this command then basically this action should be performed, etc, etc. So for any kind of formatting we want, we have to dispatch a command. Now for formatting based options, like if I want to format the text to make it bold, italic, underline, superscript, subscript, etc, I have to use a certain command. So the first parameter is the command name, and the second param is what we want to do with the command. So the command name for formatting the text is format text command, and the second param would be the payload for the format text command. So we want to format it, but how do we want to format it? So if I type an empty string, you'll see the bunch of options I get. So bold, code, highlight, italic, etc. So basically I can format my text with these options. So for this option I'll say bold. Now if I type something I selected, I click on bold, voila, it has been bolded. Now basically I will add it for all the formatting options. So basically these 8 options are all formatting text options. So I will go here and I will copy paste it. So for italics it should be italic, for underline it should be underline. Also it is TypeScript enabled, so if you make a spelling mistake or something, or you mistakenly add some other thing here, it would give an error, so don't worry. So strike through. For superscript it would be superscript. For subscript it would be subscript. For highlight it would be highlight. For code it would be code. Great. Now I've added the code for all the buttons, but you will notice one thing. If I select this and I click on italics, it doesn't make it italic. If I click on the underline button, it doesn't make it underlined. Why? Because there are some things which happen by default for some reason, but some formatting options don't work by default. So you basically have to add those styles in the theme. So remember, in the initial config we have a theme option. So basically for these theme styles, we'll have to add those styles for these particular things in the theme. So let's go there. So I will go to the RichTextEditor component. Here I will make a theme variable, and the theme variable is of type editor theme classes. Basically this would give us type completions, and this should be the theme. Cool. So basically for text formatting themes, I will type text. Then basically, it would be like bold. Again, I'm using CSS in JS library Emotion CSS. You can create a CSS file, import it, and then basically just add the class name here, your choice. So here I'll say CSS font weight should be bold. Then for underline, I will say text decoration should be underline. For strike through, it would be strike through, and then there is another option, underline strike through. So for that it would be underline and strike through. Sorry, it is line through, not strike through. Then for italic, it would be font style italic. Now if I select the text and I click on italics underline, you will see that all the necessary styles are applying. Great. Now there is one thing as well. You have to add the theme for some styles to work, but you also can use the theme to customize the styles for some. So for example, if I select this and I click on code, you'll see that it gives it a pinkish color. And in most of the rich text editors, that is not how the code formatting looks like. The code formatting looks like it has a grayish background and a light grayish border, and that is how in most of the places the code formatting is, and I want that type of code formatting. So basically I can override it. I can come here, I can say code, and then basically I can add my own styles here. So color should be black, padding should be 2, background should be grayish, so EEE, and the border should be 1 pixel solid, and then some dark grayish color, CCC. Now if I refresh, I type something and I click on the code button, you'll see that it gives it the format I specified in the theme. So this is a great way to override stuff. Similarly, let's add the logic for these buttons. So I will go to the Toolbar plugin file. Yeah, so for left align, right align, etc., I'm not formatting the text. For these alignment options, I have to pass a different command. So basically it would be format element command. And then for format element command, obviously code doesn't make sense. So if I add an empty string here, you'll see that these are the options available. So for left align, I will obviously use left. Let me copy it and paste it. So for right align, it would be right. For center align, it would be center. For justify align, it would be justify. Great. And now alignment would work as well. So right alignment, center alignment, justify, etc. Everything is working. Great. Now similarly for undo and redo, we have separate commands. So I'll add it here. For undo and redo, we have undo command. We will pass undefined here. And then for redo, we have redo command. So different commands for undo and redo. Now you will notice that undo and redo are not working. The reason is because in order for them to work, we have to add a plugin in the Lexical Composer, just like we added the RichTextPlugin and the AutoFocusPlugin. So let me add that. So I will come to the RichTextEditor file and I will import the history plugin. So here I'll say lexical history plugin, let me copy it and add it here. Now if I add something and I click on undo, it gets removed. If I add different styling to it, like various styling, and I click on undo, you can see that it goes one step back. If I click on redo, it basically goes one step forward, etc. So undo and redo are working as well. Great. Now basically I want to add the functionality where initially undo and redo buttons should be disabled, because obviously right now I haven't added anything, so I shouldn't be able to undo or redo. Similarly, I should only be able to redo when I undo some step. That is when I should be able to redo. And similarly, if I undo all the way back, redo should be disabled, and so on and so forth. So let's add the logic for that. So basically I will have to add event handlers for this. So Lexical has a own way of adding event handlers. So I'll add a use effect. Great. Then I will say return merge register. Let me import it. So I will import it from Lexical utils. Then inside this merge register function, we can add different event listeners. So in Lexical, event listeners can be added by saying editor dot registerCommand, and then we basically have to add the command name and then a function. So here the command name would be can undo command, and then here we would have function, and I will return false. And then I also have to pass a priority, so I'll pass a priority. So basically how register command works is, I have a command here, I have a event listener function, and then I have a priority. So I can have multiple register command functions or multiple event listeners for the same event, and based on the priority they will be called. So if right now low priority is 1, I can add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any number I want. So if there are 2 event listeners for the same command and one has a higher priority, that function would be called first. If in that particular function here, in that particular event listener, I return true, basically then it would not propagate further and only that particular function would be called. But if I return false, then if there is some other function event listener as well with some low priority, then that would be called as well, but in the order of priority. So right now I have only got one function, so it doesn't matter. So here I will get the payload. So I will create a state. So this payload will basically tell me if I can undo or not. Similarly, let me copy it, place a comma here, and basically here I'll say can redo command. So basically this payload param in this function would tell me if I can undo. Here basically it would tell me if I can redo. So anytime some change happens in the RichTextEditor, these functions would be called, and basically I will update the state, and based on that state I will disable the buttons. So I'll say disable map, set disable map is equal to use state, and this would be an object where it would say rich text action dot undo true. Initially obviously it should be disabled, and then for redo as well it should be true, and then I will basically pass the disable map here. So is disabled should be disable map, and then I'll pass the ID. Here I'll have to specify its type, so I'll say ID should be string, value should be boolean. So now the error goes away, and here I'll update the state for the disable map. So prev disable map, and then I'll spread it, and then here I would say undo should be equal to payload. Let me copy this. Here I will update the disable state for redo. Great. Here I have to invert these because this is the can undo command and can redo command, and we have to disable them based on those. So I will invert them. Now initially you can see that these are disabled. Great. If I type something, you can see that the undo gets enabled. If I click on enabled, the redo gets enabled, etc. So now this works great. Now let's say I add some text like this, and I click on bold. Now you can see that it does get formatted, but when I select it, I don't really know which particular formattings are active because there is no highlighting done on these buttons. So I don't really know if this particular text which I've selected is currently bold or italic or underline. I can guess based on the formatting it is, but still these buttons should be highlighted based on the text I select. So if I select this text, then these three buttons should be highlighted because these three formats have currently been applied on this selected text. So let's add the logic for that. So within this merge register function, I will add two more event handlers, and basically I will do that particular functionality there. So first of all, I will copy this and I will paste it here. Here I will add selection change command. So whenever I select something, basically this particular event handler would be called, and I can basically do stuff here. So I will call an update toolbar function here. Let me define the update toolbar function here. Similarly, I need to add another event handler type thing. So here I will say editor dot update register update listener. From here we will get the editor state. Inside it we will do editor state dot read, and inside this function we will call this update toolbar function again. Now inside this update toolbar function, I want to get the particular text which is selected. So I will say const selection is equal to $get selection. So I will import it from lexical. Then I'll say if is range selection. This is check which we need to add. So if it is range selection, then I want to basically update a state which I will define right now. So as of right now, this would be like an empty object and its type would be the same, but this would be selection map set selection map, right? And here I'll make a variable here. So const new selection map is equal to rich text action dot bold. So selection dot has format bold. So basically this has format will tell us if that particular format has been applied on the selected text. So I will basically copy paste it several times. So for italics it would be italic, for underline it would be underline, and similarly for other stuff. So strike through, here I would write strike through. For superscript it would be superscript, and so on and so forth. So the same formatted options which we pass in case of editor.dispatch function when we click on the buttons, the same formatted options can be passed here, and we can know if that particular format has been applied or not. So the last one would be code. This should be capital code. Also highlight, one last remaining thing, highlight. Cool. So I will set the selection map to the new selection map. Great. And I will copy the selection map. I would go here, and one thing, I will make a function which would basically return the selected props if the button is selected. So I'll say const get selected button props is equal to is selected. If is selected, then let me give it a type. So boolean, then return this, otherwise return this. For the selected case, color scheme should be blue and variant should be solid. So now I would say spread these props, selection map, and then I will pass the ID. So basically, if a particular button is selected, for that particular corresponding ID of the button, selection map would return true. If it is true, then I am basically returning a color scheme blue and various solid. So basically that button would become blue. So now if I write something and I apply some format, you can see that that particular button gets highlighted here. And now even if I am typing something new, because it is carrying the same format, all the buttons are highlighted. And if I, let's say, remove some formatting, apply some different kind of formatting, then you will see that when I select this, these buttons get selected, but when I select this text, these buttons get highlighted or selected. So basically that is how most rich text editors work. Now the last thing I need to add is the headings select. So if I select a particular heading, basically it should change the format of the text to that particular heading style. So let's add that. So for that, I will add a select here. So select from Chakra UI. Then basically there is a headings array I have already defined. So this is h1 to h6. So headings dot map heading, I will return a option tag, an HTML option tag. Here I will show the heading, and here the value would also be heading. Now inside this select, I will add an on change function. I'll say e update heading e.target.value. So whatever option we click, basically it would pass it to the update heading function. Let me create the update heading function. So update heading is equal to it, we would get the heading here, and this heading would have a type. So I will go here and I will import from lexical rich text. I will import two things. First of all, I will import the type, so heading tag type, and then create heading node. Cool. Now I will use this as the type here in this particular function. Now inside this function, first of all, I will do the same thing as I did for the update toolbar case. So I have to see if the selection is valid and get the selected text, because I want to apply the heading format to the selected text. So I'll add it here, remove this. Here I will import another function. So from lexical selection, I will import wrap nodes. Now here I would say wrap nodes. I'll pass in the selection, then a function, and here I would say create heading node and heading. Let me pass the $sign here. Great. Here I would say as heading tag type to silent the typescript error. Its size is huge. Let me shrink the size. So I'll say size should be XS. Also, let me give it a right margin of 2. Great. One last thing which I forgot, I will have to wrap this with editor.update. So this would go here. Let me also pass a placeholder. So placeholder is equal to select heading. If I now add any text and I select any heading, you'll see that that particular heading is applied, which is great. Okay, so we can see that we can apply different formattings by clicking on these buttons, but normally that's not what people expect when using a rich text editor. They expect that they would have keyboard shortcuts like Ctrl Z for undo, Ctrl B for bold, etc. That is a better UX. So let's add that. So for that, I will create a hook. So let me create a hooks folder. So I'll go here, hooks, then inside it I will create use KeyBindings.tsx. Let me create the hook. Bindings is equal to, and basically I will use the on action function which we have in the toolbar plugin, and basically I'll pass it as a prop to this component, and basically based on the keys I press, I basically would perform the necessary action. So I will get the action here. So on action, and on action would have the type ID rich text action. Cool. Now Let me import it here. So I will place it here on KeyBindings, and then I'll pass the onAction function here. Great. Now here, let me get the editor as always. So I'll say import from lexical react composer context. I will get the hook. So use lexical composer context. I will get the editor from here. Then let me use the use effect, and basically I will do the same thing as I did in case of checking if I can undo or redo, etc. I will register a event listener. So I will say editor dot register command, and then the command name is key enter command. So basically whenever some key would be pressed in this rich text editor, this event listener would run. Cool. So event, now this event would basically give me different stuff, like also let me pass the priority. So basically this event listener would give me different stuff, like which keys I pressed, did I press the control key, etc. So for example, I'll say if event dot key is equal to b and event dot control key. So basically if I pressed control and b, then I should call the onAction function with the RichTextAction dot bold command. Let me pass onAction and editor here. Cool. Now let me test it. Now if I type some text, I select it and I click on Control B, you'll see that that button gets selected. Also it gets formatted to bold, and I didn't even click on the button and you saw it. So similarly, I would like to add it for some more key bindings. So if I type Control and I would like to make it italics. If I type Control and U, I will like to underline it. If I type Control and Z, I will like to undo. If I type Control Y, I will like to redo. So these are the things which I think are essential, but if you want, you can add your own key combinations and the respective actions here as well, your choice. Now I can select this text, I can click on Control I, it makes it italicized. I can click on Control U, it underlines it. Similarly, I can click on Control Z and it undoes it, and I can click on Control Y and basically redoes it. So that is how you can add key bindings to your rich text editor. Now everything is great, but this right now was an uncontrolled component. What we want is we want to make this a controlled component, so that first of all we can, if there is a form, I can integrate this rich text editor in a form, and then basically if I click on submit, I can take the payload, send it to the backend. Similarly, if the payload for the rich text editor, the string is coming from the backend, I can repopulate this rich text editor. So let me make it a controlled component. So for that, let me go to rich text editor and let me add some props here. So I would go to the rich text editor props. Let me copy this, paste it here. So first of all, value would be string. On change would be a function which expects value, which is a string, which would be a setter for the state. Then let me have a placeholder. So I'm basically making this a reusable component now, and this would also be a string. And here I would also have a name property. So basically, if there are multiple rich text editors in a form, I want that their namespace is different. So I'll copy this initial config and basically I'll put it here. So initial config, I'll wrap this with use memo. And basically let me import use memo. Here I would have value on change placeholder name. Name would go here and here. Similarly, placeholder would go here. Let me make a form component. So I'll say new file form.tsx. Here I will have a box. First of all, let me import the RichTextEditor here. Let me have a state here. So const value set value is equal to use state empty string. On change would be set value new value. So new value would come from here. Here it would be value is equal to value. And name would be, let's say, post. Maybe this is a blog post form. And let me also add a placeholder here. I'll say select post. Now here I will add a submission button also. So its color scheme would be WhatsApp, so basically green. Size would be XS. Here I would say save for now, and also let me give it a margin top of 2. That is good, but I now have to basically add these value and on change somewhere. So basically I will have to create a on change plugin. So let's create that, and then I will add it here. So I'll go here to plugins. Let me create a plugin. So custom on change plugin.tsx. I'll go here RFC. Now here let me basically have props. So custom on change plugin props, and basically the props would be the same as for RichTextEditor. So value on change. So I'll grab it, I'll put it here, and then value on change. Let me add this plugin in the RichTextEditor. So I will add it here. So custom on change plugin. Value should go here, on change should go here. Now let's add the logic for setting the state, which is our first priority. That is simple. I will import the on change plugin. So I'll say from lexical react on change plugin, I want to import the on change plugin. Here I would return it. So on change plugin, inside the on change plugin I will add an on change function. This on change function would give me the editor state. I will say editor state dot read. Inside this read function I will call on change my function. I would import another function from the package. So I'll say from lexical HTML I will import generate HTML from nodes. So generate HTML from nodes, that expects an editor instance, so I will have to import that as well. So let me copy this. So here I'll say lexical composer context. I'll import the hook. Here I'll say const editor, same thing which I did previously, and I'll call the hook, and I'll pass the editor here. Let me add the $sign here. Great. So basically now I haven't catered for the value, but whenever I would type something, this on change function would be called and the state would be updated. So now you can see, it works the same way. Let me console log the state so that we can know if it is working or not. So I will say console log value. Now inside the app component, instead of RichTextEditor, let me import the form component. Now you can see that I get some value here. Now every time I would type something, you can see that I get some stringified HTML. I bold it, italicizes, whatever. It basically adds the necessary stylings and tags here, like the B tag, I tag, U tag. And this is a stringified HTML. I can send it to the backend and it can be stored as a normal string, and then basically I can retrieve it. So basically now I'll add the logic for that, where I can use the form to submit it, and it would send this string to the backend, and then basically I can retrieve the HTML on refresh, and basically it would update the RichTextEditor. So let's add that. So basically I already have created a small server. So basically this is a normal Express server, and I'm not utilizing a database, but basically there is a variable here. So every time I would post the data, so when I would click on the save button, I would basically send the text here, and every time I would do that, I would basically replace this text with the new text I'm sending from the front end. And every time I would use the get method to get the data, I would basically return the updated text. So basically this can be seen as a server which is using a database and basically storing the string in a database, but I didn't want to complicate things, so that is our dummy server. And also I have created a query and mutation beforehand because I didn't want to complicate things. So basically this is a mutation I've created from stack react query, and I'm calling this data mutation function post, and basically I would just send in the text and it would be saved as the variable in the server. Here in the query, I am basically just getting the data and returning it. First of all, let me integrate the mutation. So I would go to the form component. Let me close all the files. Let me remove this. Here I would create an onSave function. So onSave would be, let me import the mutation. So mutate async save text is equal to use update data, and basically I would pass in the value here, and on click I would like to call this function, and basically when the mutation would be called, I would get a is pending variable during the time. So basically in order to know if the mutation is running, I would change the text. So if is pending is true, I would add saving, otherwise save. So let me open the network tab. Let me add something. So whatever text, let me add the styling. Let me click save. And now you can see that I'm basically sending in this stringified HTML and I'm getting a status true. Great. Now let me integrate the query as well to see if I get the updated data. So I'll say const data is equal to use data. So now let me refresh this, and the query is called and it returns meow, basically the same text which we sent in the stringified HTML form with bold and superscript and strike through styling. So that is present here. Great. Now the only thing which we need to do is we need to take this stringified HTML and basically show it in the RichTextEditor. So let's do that. So let me go to the RichTextEditor file. Here in the custom onChangePlugin function is where we will add the remaining logic for writing the query data here. So I will have a state. So const is first render, set is first render is equal to use state. So initially it will be true because it is the first render. Then I will add a use effect. Let me add a braces. I will add here if there is no value, or if it's not the first render, then return. I don't want to do anything. Here I would set is first render to false because now it's not, I'm inside the use effect. Here I again need the editor, so I'll say editor dot update. Let me add the dependencies here. So editor value is first render. Here I would need another function. So just like I was generating HTML from nodes, now I need generate nodes from DOM. So first I would like to generate the HTML, current HTML from the editor, just like I did here. So I'll copy this. If this current HTML is not equal to the value, then I want to update the RichTextEditor with the value. I will get the get root function from lexical and I'll say clear. Then I will get the parser from DOM parser. I would parse the string, so I'll say const DOM is equal to parser dot parse from string value, and the type would be text HTML. So I'll get the nodes then. So generate nodes from DOM. First I'll pass the editor instance and then the DOM, and then I'll basically use the insert nodes function from lexical and insert the nodes. Now one last thing is remaining. I will add a use effect here. So when the query data would come, I would want to update the state with the query data. So that, let me add the data here. I also need to add another use effect. So if the value changes, then I want to set the is first render to true. Now if I refresh, you'll see that the data persists and the data coming from the backend is shown here, which is great. Now if I add any other thing, like I add this dummy text, I basically make it coded, I change its text element, etc. Now if I save it and refresh it, you will see that the data persists and the data is shown in the RichTextEditor. So that is it for the course. I am pretty sure you liked it. There was not enough material for it on YouTube and I was using it in my job, so I thought that I should make a video about it. If you liked the video, learned anything from it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. It took me a long while to make this course, and also it takes a long while to make the video plus edit it, etc. So it would be great if you would show some support and like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe, etc. So that is it for the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.